Today on the podcast, it's kind of like consumer alert, like alert, beep, 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 beep. We got a message in here today. Something you need to know. Did you know what the fourth leading cause of death in the United States is? Do you take medication or do your loved ones take medication? You may want to listen to this episode. Let's do this.
Welcome to the No Sitting on the Sideline Dad podcast, a podcast about a journey of discovery and conversations about not sitting on the sideline of life. Let's get involved. Here's host Joe Foley.
Well, thank you for being here. My name is Joe, and I want to thank you very much for being here. Hey, if this is the first time, welcome. Hey, welcome to the podcast. I really do appreciate you. This is a podcast about a journey of discovery. Why you should be here? Because you might be looking for some information, like me. I'm looking about figuring out today's topic, which is very important, and also like sugar addiction, we'll go through divorce. I mean, I would say in the last 2 years, I've been through a lot of different changes, a lot of different things, and exploring different topics in this podcast helped me through it all and become a better person. So I think this topic today will be very helpful to you and your loved ones. I got a very important question for you. Do you or your loved ones take medication? You really do not want to miss this interview. Do you know what the fourth leading cause of death in the United States is? Basically, your body's genetic. What I mean is, you might be taking the wrong medication. Take the right medication, the wrong dose. This information in this interview could help you or your loved ones, or at least get more information, help you and your doctor figure out what's best for you. My guest is not a doctor, but he's extremely passionate about putting a big spotlight on this topic. My guest today is founder, CEO of the visionary company MedxPrime. He wants to save lives from adverse drug reaction. My guest today is Mr. Sunil Wadhwa. He shares a lot of good information, a lot of stories about things that happen from adverse drug reaction, some personal stories too. So let's jump right in. Hello, Mr. Wadhwa. Welcome to the podcast.
Joe, how are you, sir? Thanks so much for having me on your show today.
Well, thank you for being here. I really do appreciate it and then taking your time out of your busy day. And I know we're all busy, especially this time of year. I know we're going to talk about the adverse drug reaction, but I know you're very passionate about it. Can you tell me, do you have a personal story you could share that maybe you could talk about?
Yeah, Joe, unfortunately, I've got a couple of them, as so many of your listeners probably will relate. I almost lost my wife 10 years ago due to an adverse drug reaction. And then my father, about 7 years ago now, I guess it's been, had an open heart surgery. And as we all know, an open heart patient is put on a myriad of medications, and the poor guy had nothing but reactions and would call the doctors, and the doctors would say, well, come on in and we'll try something else. So off to the doctors, off to the pharmacy, get the new cocktail mix, come home, try that. And that didn't work, made it worse many times, back to the doctors. And the cycle went on for about a year, Joe, before they finally figured out the right cocktail for him. So when I discovered by accident this test, I was just absolutely livid, frankly, as to why in the world this very simple test, which I know we're going to get into here, wasn't given to my father by his physician before cutting the man open in half. And I'm sure, again, your listeners, just me sharing just that little bit, are probably thinking, wait a minute, that happened to me. That happened to my mom. That happened to my brother. That happened to my sister. That happened to my son. That happened to because we've, unfortunately, most everyone that's on medication, unfortunately, experiences reactions of some sort.
It's astonishing when they learn the adverse drug reactions, the fourth leading cause of death. I mean, there's 125,000 people dying every year and like 350 per day. And you don't really hear this talked about that much.
It's absolutely staggering, baffling, if you will, that most of us in the population have no clue as to what you just shared. Adverse drug reactions is the fourth leading cause of death. The fourth. And the number you cited, 125,000 of us are going to die every year. Joe, let me give an analogy to that because, we hear numbers all the time, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, a million, a billion, a trillion. And for the average consumer out there, those numbers go in one year and out the other. So I want to give a visual here for your listeners to really emphasize the significance of this 125,000 deaths a year. Think of it as an airplane, if you will, with 350 passengers crashing every single day for the next 1 year. Joe, that is 125,000 people.
That would be all over the news if something like that was happening.
Well, yeah, exactly my point. I mean, an airplane, when it goes down, the media around the world is all over that, and rightfully so. It's a tragedy. But what I'm talking about here today is a plane going down every single day with 350 people for a whole year. And yet there's no spotlight on this. And I want to thank you for putting the spotlight on this very, very serious topic. We're not talking the 400th leading cause of death. We're talking about the 4th leading cause of death, right behind cancer, stroke, and heart attacks. Okay. I mean, this is crazy that it's the 4th leading cause of death, and most everyone in the country knows nothing about it. And let me make a bold statement here, and this is going to really dumbfound you and your audience. Even the medical community as a whole doesn't know about it. I challenge you and I to walk out the door. I don't care what part of the country you want to do this. You and I can walk out the door and we can go talk to 100 doctors, and we'll be hard pressed to find maybe 1 or 2 that know about it. And with all due respect, even if they say they know about it, they really don't know about it, Joe. It's just mind-boggling to me at so many levels that this test has been around now, coming on 14 years, and nobody knows about it. How silly.
That is amazing, because you hear about all the time people going to the doctors and stuff like that and going, oh, this didn't work, we'll try this, and then we'll give you something extra of this. And it's amazing they haven't heard about that.
Well, look, with 4 billion, with a B, Joe, with a B for boy, 4 billion prescriptions written in the United States, with a population of 330 million, M for Mary, million, the chances are very good that most everyone that is listening to your show today is on medication or has somebody in their family that is on medication, period. And secondly, all of your listeners have either had a reaction to medication or certainly somebody in their family has, period. End of discussion. It is that scary. And yet this very simple test, nobody knows about.
Well, what's interesting is a little talk about you and stuff like that. How did you, what is MedxPrime and how did you start it?
Great question. Thanks for asking that. So 5 years ago, I'm coming back from New York. Spent a week out there with the family, enjoying the week out in New York, coming back to California. And I was just bored in flight. And I started flipping through magazines and I ran across an article on this test. And as I read the article, I reflected on my wife's situation and my dad's situation that I just shared with you. And as I read this article, Joe, I became fuming mad. I could not believe what I was reading. Again, reflecting on the fact that my wife almost died of a reaction and my dad was cut open in half, open heart surgery, put on all these meds, had nothing but problems, dizzy spells, and he fell a few times and weak, and all the things that happen with medication. And I'm reading this article. Then I get to the point that it's the 4th leading cause of death. Then I get to the point that this test had been out for a number of years at that time. And I kept wondering why in the world no one knows about this? Why did my father have an open heart surgery without the test? So long story short, I got off the plane, Joe, and I called my management team and I said, guys, we know nothing about this area, but we're going to find out more about this. And as we researched it, we found that, man, nobody knows about this. When I say nobody, majority of the population had no clue about it. Hence, we started MedxPrime. And Joe, we're on a mission, man. We're on a mission to expose everyone we can about this brilliant test. And we have a national sales team that calls on doctors and hospitals and their next door neighbors and their family members and anyone they can touch and educate, if you will, about this brilliant test is our mission. Our motto is every doctor, every patient. Every doctor, every patient must know about the genius of this test.
Well, the one thing I mentioned in the beginning, and I wonder if I'd ask this question, is the adverse drug reaction and based on your body's genetics. Is there something that would be familiar with some of the body genetics? There's something that you guys discovered or through MedxPrime or the test?
No, I wish I did, Joe. If I did, I would be floating on an island somewhere. I wish I did. No, the test was actually discovered by the Genome Project by the U.S. government, which took place, about 15 plus years ago. You might remember the country spent, I think it was $3.4 billion on the Genome Project. And during that Genome Project is when they discovered our genes that metabolize medication in layman's terms here. So no, it's not something we discovered. When I started MedxPrime, Joe, I went out and found the number one lab. There are not a lot of labs that do the analysis work on this, but I found the number one lab in the country that we've now teamed up with. And they do just a fabulous job. So we are out there as a marketing arm, again, educating the general population and doctors alike.
Have you ever got any stories back from any testimonies from doctors or patients?
Oh man, we don't have enough time. I wish I did. I wish we had 2-3 hours on your show here because I could cite a bunch of them. But let me share one quick story within actually another story here that recently unfortunately happened. We do national webinars every single day in our company where our representatives can invite their next door neighbor, their mom, dad, whomever, but to listen to this life-saving information. And we had a father from Texas that joined the call. And immediately afterwards, he called us. And what we do, Joe, as we would like to do for your listeners, is we provide a one-page letter that they can take to their doctor with very clear, concise information about the brilliance of this test. And so the father called us and said, hey, I'd like to get that letter. And by the way, there's no cost for that letter. We'll get into that here in just a minute as well. So he called us and we gave him the letter. He took it in on behalf of his daughter that had been dealing with a medical problem for 15 years. And over the last couple of years, she's been regressing. Okay. So he takes this letter to the doctor and the doctor says, you know what? I don't believe in these tests. I've been practicing medicine for 35 years. I know what my patients need and more importantly, what they don't need. Okay. So the father said, no, not good enough. He took it to her other doctor and that doctor, Joe, says, absolutely, let's get this test done. I would definitely want more information than not. So long story short, Joe, the test results come back. The second doctor says to father, I hate to say this to you, but I'm surprised that your daughter is still alive.
Oh, wow.
Because she's on all the wrong medications and all the wrong dosages based on the results of this test. Needless to say, he adjusted the medications and the father, we actually had him on one of our national calls. We do every Tuesday night national call for our representatives and we share success stories and testimonials, et cetera. So we invited the father to come on that call and share the story. And Joe, he's literally crying on air with us. He says, you guys don't understand. We've been dealing with this craziness for 15 years. And within 60 days of my daughter being on the right medication, the right dosage, I have my daughter back. I mean, it was just amazing story. And again, that's the genius of it. Just another quick story, if you don't mind. Recently, a police officer at Texas A&M, he was rescuing a cat, C-A-T, cat. The cat bit him. The bite went through the glove, and they took him to emergency. At emergency, they gave the officer a certain medication that had a severe adverse drug reaction for the officer, ends up in the ICU, ends up on a ventilator, and a few days later, Joe, he died, all from a cat bite that resulted in a medication given to him in an emergency that resulted in ICU, on a ventilator, and eventually his death. We have a representative, his daughter-in-law, beautiful young lady, 37 years old, mother of 5. One Sunday afternoon, she says to the family, hey, I'm not feeling well. She goes to take a nap. Her little baby girl runs and finds mommy dead. Carrie, the mom, was on 8 medications. That evening, she had a severe reaction and passed away.
It's so overwhelming to hear these stories and people going through the stuff like this. And it's surprising. You don't hear about it. You just don't hear about this situation.
Well, Joe, I did a show literally yesterday, with another gal that we met, where we met you at the Publicity Summit in New York. And during the show, she says, Sunil, my mom was hospitalized literally 2 days ago because she had a reaction to medication. And she says, I absolutely want this letter to take to her doctor and get this test done for her. Another host like yourself that I was on the air with just yesterday.
Oh, wow. I mean, it's just interesting. How was reaction from other, like, have you had any negative reaction? Like you said something about a doctor about, like, I know what I'm doing, but any other negative feedback or pushback from doctors?
The general pushback we get is that we don't have enough time to yet do another test. I mean, look, doctors are very busy in today's practice, but with all due respect, and I love doctors, this is not certainly an attack on doctors in any way, shape, or form. It angers me as to why such a brilliant test that provides so much information. Look, in layman's terms, and I'll answer your question, but in layman's terms, let me make sure everybody understands. Let's keep this very simple. You and I have had a urine test done at our doctor's office, have we not?
Yes.
Why do they do that? So that they can get the results of our chemistry and what's going on inside our body in layman's terms, right?
Yeah.
And the numbers that come back to them help them to take care of us in layman's terms. Well, have we had a blood test done? Of course. It gives the doctor insight to our body so that they can better treat us. It's just that simple. MRIs, X-rays. This is a vision, if you will, for the doctor to see inside our body. Joe, that's all this is. This is a simple Q-tip in the patient's mouth given by the doctor or his staff. It goes to our lab. Lab sends back a report that says, based on Joe's metabolism, these are the medications that Joe can handle, and these are the medications Joe cannot handle. And these are the dosages. And in fact, we even go further. We even do drug-to-drug interaction. So if, Joe, you were on 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 or 20 medications, like so many people are, this report also gives that information to the doctor. So bottom line, the doctor can now prescribe the right medication, the right dosage, right from the beginning, rather than playing the trial and error and the guessing game. It's just that simple.
It's amazing when medical technology has advanced so much to help people. And then that test it's just amazing.
It is truly amazing. There's more and more. In fact, by the way, I want to make sure your audience totally understands that this is not an experimental thing. This test has now been around for 14 years. Mayo Clinic, Vanderbilt, Johns Hopkins, Stanford, and many other very well-known clinics and hospitals are indeed using this test. In fact, I absolutely applaud, I bow, if you will, to St. Jude's Research Hospital, because they announced, 2 years ago now, that they're going to test, or they are testing, every patient with this very simple test.
One question, as a person and myself, that would be interested to get this test myself. How about insurance? Insurance cover it? I know a lot of people, would be listening, will be like, what is insurance covered? Do they cover a test like this?
Great question. I'm so glad you asked that. So Medicare is reimbursing for this test. Of course, the doctor has to determine medical necessity for that patient and send in some information to the lab about the patient and what ailments and what medication they may be on. But with that simple information provided to the lab, generally Medicare is reimbursing for the patient. Medicaid is now reimbursing with 17 states. Our lab is very proactively going out and getting approval from Medicaid and has done so in 17 states. And many insurance companies now are starting to reimburse for this test. When we started the company nearly, 4.5, 5 years ago, very few insurance companies, Joe, were reimbursing at that time. But now more and more are understanding the value. In fact, an article just came out a couple months ago that cited that by a patient getting this test done, the insurance companies can save roughly about $4,000 a year on that patient by keeping them out of harm's way, and again, layman's terms here, from potential of adverse drug reactions. And that's an average. I bet that number is even higher than that, but $4,000 a year savings. By the way, this test is a one-time lifetime test. One-time lifetime test. So not something that a patient needs every day or every month or every year. One-time lifetime test. Is very simple.
It's just amazing. I mean, it would be in the best interest of the insurance companies to probably do this because, like you said, they're saving a ton of money when they can find out the correct dosage and stuff like that.
Well, absolutely. And hey, look, let me make just a bold, and this is my personal opinion. I believe that anyone that is taking a medication or a combination of medications absolutely should get this test done, because without it, frankly, a person's playing Russian roulette. As that mother of 5, when she passed away that Sunday afternoon, she had no clue what was going on internally with her and all the medications that she was consuming. A young boy that was on 4 medications, 10-year-old young boy on medications, is on 4 medications. He passed away. So we never know when this will trigger. It might trigger tomorrow. It might trigger a week from now. It might trigger a year from now or 10 years from now. We don't know. But isn't it better to be proactive? I mean, let's use some common sense here. Why in the world would anyone want to take a medication without knowing if that medication is going to suit their body or not? It just doesn't make any sense.
Clearly, this is a big issue, and it's something that'd be important to get out to everybody. Where can they find the test? How can they obtain the test, the letter?
Well, what we've done, again, is created this one-page, very clear, concise letter and a packet of information that we'll send to your listeners. All they need to do is give us a call at 800-989-7703. Again, 800-989-7703. And we'll be more than happy. And by the way, let me just make sure everybody understands. When you call us, we're not going to sell you anything. We're not going to upsell you anything. We're not going to want a credit card from you. Keep it in your wallet. We're simply here to educate you so you can take the letter. Then your listeners are saying, well, how do you guys get paid? Well, when the test is done by the doctor and the lab gets paid, we have an agreement with the lab, of course. So that's nothing for you guys to worry about as a patient. We want you to call us, get this letter in your hands. We'll give you an instruction sheet. It's a very simple process. You'll want to take this letter immediately to your doctor, or certainly, of course, the next appointment that you have with your doctor. Again, the number 800-989-7703.
That number will be in the show notes for this episode. If you can contact Sunil, and for the test, Sunil will be definitely be in the show notes.
Beautiful, wonderful.
Well, today we learned something really very important, actually, and I really want to say thank you for being on the podcast today. And how can we spread the word about the national campaign for adverse drug reaction? How would you do it?
I would love to, as your listeners call us and get this information in their hands to take to their doctors, we would be happy to share with them that they could join our national webinars that we do on a daily basis should they want to educate somebody in their family about it. We also have recordings that we can send to them to send to people that they know. So we have certain means to help them, to help educate some of their sphere of influence, their center of influence, their family, friends, next door neighbors, if they should wish to do so.
Well, Sunil, thank you very much for being on the podcast today. I really do appreciate it. And we'll spread the word about the adverse drug reaction.
Joe, you're awesome. Thank you so much, my friend, for helping us put the spotlight that this incredible test, which must be understood by the entire population. By the way, not only in the U.S., worldwide. People are taking medications all over the world. Of course, we consume more medication here in the U.S. than any other country, so it's certainly a crisis here. But certainly, people all over the world need to know about this genius test.
Well, thank you for joining me on the No City on the Sideline Dad podcast. I want to thank Mr. Sunil Wadhwa for being a guest on the podcast. You can find more about Mr. Wadhwa or MedxPrime in the show notes. Also, that phone number you mentioned too will be in the show notes too at nocityonthesideline.com/63. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment. Or if you want to get in touch with me, you can find nocityonthesideline.com/contact. I guess taking from the interview, more information is better. Well, thank you for your time. Until next time, have fun, get involved with your children, give everybody you love a hug and kiss, because time is short, man. Time is real short. Until next time, take care. God bless. See ya.
Thank you for listening to the podcast. Please subscribe to the newsletter to receive updates of the show and helpful and useful tips. This has been a production of Foley 42 Media.